This is episode 353 of the 3 Point Podcast, presented by the Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. Struggling with mobility or pain? I know I am. Contact the Wellness Center on how to get 20% off flexibility packages. Make sure you follow the Wellness Center on Facebook for more details. We are also brought to you in part by AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori and Associates Real Estate Services, and Nelson House Funeral Homes. We'll tell you more, but let's play a little catch up at this point. I mean, Jared, you're back to the real world now, but you had kind of a whirlwind weekend, you know. I'm glad we were a part of it as well, but just why don't you start off talking about your brother's wedding?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's already come and went. I mean, or came and went, excuse me. Feels like we've been preparing for since a year ago when he proposed, about exactly a year ago today, when he proposed and we were all in a family spring break together. Feels like it's been basically like a sprint to the finish line. I mean, I haven't done much in the planning sector, but you still get ready for it. And you still get geared up and you're still excited for it. So yeah, it was an awesome time. It was a lot of fun. Just almost surreal to see your brother get married, to be honest. Like, it still doesn't really seem real. He's on a honeymoon right now. Basically phone is turned off. So I'll talk to him in a week about it, on a cruise ship. So yeah, it just was awesome. I mean, some of the highlights, I actually thought my brother's best man speech was actually very good. I feel like that got a good reception. And just the whole night was just fun from start to finish, man. It started at 9 a.m. with breakfast, ended at about midnight after cleanup. Just a very good time. I mean, weddings really are the best, and it really makes you, think back, from 20 years ago to 10 years ago to now. It really makes you feel like you're a grown adult, and it's just weird to think of all the, I've been to maybe 3 or 4 weddings as a kid, and you just never think that day is going to come for yourself, for your actual family, your brothers, whoever. And when it finally comes, it goes in a blink. So just a lot of fun. And I'm still kind of in almost like a post Super Bowl hangover or something. I feel like I'm just depressed, man. I got to get back into work today, get back in the swing of things. But yeah, just a lot of fun. Very, very good time.
Yeah, especially because you said, your older brother. So you're remembering your brother who's just tormenting you and teasing right. you and picking on you. And now he's a grown adult who's married, and it's just like you don't picture that, with it being your brother.
Weird.
But no, weddings are fun. We've talked about weddings before on the podcast, but I know your guys' family is pretty close, and you guys still get together quite a bit. But it's just probably not every wedding is perfect. Of course, there's obviously some that don't go well, but usually, you hear about a wedding, family gets together. You're all enjoying yourselves, catching up, maybe some family members you haven't seen in a while, maybe even some friends, I'm sure some of his friends came that maybe you hadn't seen in a while, even you, Ted. So right. Yeah, it's a good time to get together with people and almost like disconnect from the real world for 2 days or whatever. Yeah. You just get together, you eat some food, you dance, you have some drinks, you catch up and have a good time.
Yeah. Now, I wasn't in the inner circle. Jared was there for the whole thing. Looking at it from where I was at, I think everything was pulled off without a hitch, I mean, first of all, the food was fantastic at the reception. The wedding itself went really well. Jared, were you a little nervous walking down the aisle at all? Be honest.
No, I mean, yeah, it is a little bit, I guess. I was criticized for when we entered the wedding.
Oh,
I didn't do some big dance or anything like that. So
you entered the reception or the wedding?
Or the reception. I mean, yeah, the reception. I didn't have some big dance planned or some handshake, so I got a little bit of hate for that. But that's just not me, man. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it was nerves or it's just I gotta be 15 beers deep to really get into the dance bag. But no, yeah, no, not overly nervous. If I had to give a speech, I definitely would have been a lot more nervous for sure.
Yeah, and it had a couple of really neat things. Obviously, the DJ guy, he was good. And yeah, and then you guys kind of carried on this tradition from your high school open houses. You had a caricature guy doing caricatures of guests. So there was an artist sitting in one corner of the reception area. Everybody that went to the wedding that could get in line and schedule it got a caricature. So that was pretty cool.
Those guys are talented, man. In 10 minutes, they whipped together basically a self-portrait. Obviously, it's a little bit goofified, But
Right.
that guy, I was impressed, man. There was such a long line to get the caricature drawings. Like this guy was working what felt like nonstop for 5 hours.
Yeah, all the way to 11 o'clock.
And he never complained. Obviously he's getting paid for it, but yeah, I just
Right.
thought that was pretty impressive how he just one after another, never ending drawings. And yeah, people really got a kick out of that. Kind of a nice little keepsake. That was my mom's idea, I believe. And I think it really turned out well.
Yeah.
That is fun. I've seen some people post pictures of that becoming kind of a thing at weddings. Obviously the photo booth has been done a lot, you know, and that's really fun too. But sometimes those, you know, you get the pictures and then once you get home, you're kind of like, oh, didn't even really turn out that good. You know, it's just that little film strip for photos and you're kind of like goofy because you got props on and, you know, you chuckle and then you kind of move on. But a caricature, you know, you could put it in a frame, you can put it up on your wall, you know, you can frame it, you know, obviously, especially if it's a good artist. I'm sure it was. So yeah, that's pretty cool to do.
You know, back in the day too, I don't know if you guys remember, there used to be these little Instamatic disposable cameras, and I don't know if you've been to a wedding, Matt, because it was probably still maybe a bit in your time where they're sitting on the table and then the people take pictures themselves, you know. Our little go-to was, I think we saw it somewhere else, but our go-to on those was we would take a mug shot. We'd put a number on a placard and hold it up and do a front view and a side view, and that'd be our mug shot. And that was behind the camera when they opened it up. So that
can be funny. Yeah, that we did that at ours, and yeah, I definitely remember. You know, my friends, the disposable cameras were still a thing at a lot of my family and friends' weddings. Those, like, I would say it's probably about what 60-40 on photos that are actually like usable and ones that aren't. You know, whether they're appropriate or they're just like people's feet or it's like, you know, someone's face. Right. So yeah, I mean, but it's still fun to get those back. You know, and just laugh about all those photos. But yeah, weddings are fun.
Absolutely. Congrats to Johnny and Lauren. We'll be looking forward to talking with them when they get back. By the way, our other great partners include Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, Shiawassee County Fair, and ALS of Michigan. Well, we got a special guest coming up next. We're going to talk March Madness, Sweet 16 Michigan basketball, as we're going to hook up with Brian Boesch, the Michigan basketball play-by-play voice, right after this. Well, our special guest is heading to Atlanta in the Sweet 16 with the University of Michigan basketball team, radio play-by-play voice, Brian Boesch. He joins us here on 3 Point Podcast. Welcome, Brian. And first question, I guess, is what went through your mind when the horn sounded on Saturday night in that win over A&M?
Well, Ted, Matt, Jared, appreciate you all having me on. A lot, because, you know, that was the 1-year anniversary of FAU's loss in overtime to Northwestern in the first round last year. And so much of the 2024 season was thinking about where this program was going to go. We did not know about Juwan Howard's status until the very end of the season. And I credit Ward Manuel for allowing that team to finish that season, as frustrating as it was. The health storyline was a very real one, but it was impossible as that season was going on to think anything differently than, okay, how does Michigan get back? And is Juwan Howard the person who can do it? Then the announcement happens. Juwan gets fired, relieved of his duties is probably a more
mutual parting of ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Kinder words.
Exactly. And you know, Dusty May was, I think, on the top of most people's lists, and there were obviously some high-profile openings that were there or potentially there with Ohio State. So for Michigan to act swiftly and get him was phenomenal. And to think about the changes over the course of that year, it all kind of just came into mind in that, the whole concept of like life flashing before your eyes, right? Like the last year kind of flashes before your eyes, and you hear the stat, this is the 6th consecutive time that Michigan's made the NCAA tournament that they've been in the Sweet 16. Not many programs do that with an 8-24 season sprinkled in. So for this program to do it, for those who stayed to have been a part of the Renaissance, the 1-year Renaissance, I think that's where kind of my head went to. And then statistically, the rebounds, that was where my mind went to in the vacuum of that game, because it was Michigan's best performance on the glass. And frankly, I don't even know what the number 2 one is. It was that good.
Maybe the turnovers. They did kind of keep their turnovers down a little bit. So
They did.
yeah,
But the nice thing was, Matt, that they did do that for 2 of the 3 games in the Big Ten tournament as well. We've seen that it's possible, right? But when you face the best rebounding team in the country and you outboard them by 9, they hadn't lost the offensive rebounding battle since mid-January, and Michigan won it. And that was just not the case, because the 2 teams I saw from the Big Ten and Texas A&M terrified me in the prep. It was Michigan State and Illinois.
Yep.
And those games did not go well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we all know Michigan has some struggles when it comes to turnovers that can be frustrating to watch as a fan. I'm sure even while you're calling the game is a little frustrating. Another turnover by Michigan. That can probably be a little frustrating, but they've cleaned things up and they're back in the Sweet 16 coming off a Big Ten tournament championship. So, hey, whatever frustrations we had at the end of the season, they've definitely turned it around. And at work, obviously at my work, it's a lot of SEC fans, but people have been saying, do you think they can make a Final Four? Do you think they could win a national championship? And I was like, honestly, obviously national championship, who knows? A lot of things have to come out right, but you're in the Sweet 16. I mean, why not? I've watched a lot of Auburn this year. Obviously, Auburn is the overall number 1 seed for a reason. Jani Broome is no joke. He could be National Player of the Year. There's no reason that Michigan can't beat them, though, right? I mean, they have the way Vlad Golden is playing, the way Danny Wolf can play. Trey Donaldson has come up big. They can beat anyone, I think. I mean, a lot of things have to play out right. But do you kind of see it that way? Obviously, you've watched a lot of Michigan. I don't know if you all would call yourself a Michigan fan, but,
absolutely.
From the analyst standpoint, could you see Michigan beating the overall number 1 seed in Auburn?
Yeah, I think you can take that a couple ways. One, once you get to this point, and really, I think once you get to the round of 32, you throw the seeds out. Right. I mean, Texas A&M was a really good team. They were a 4 seed, and you compare and contrast to Auburn. Texas A&M just beat Auburn. Now, that does not mean the transitive property is going to show up, because that's not how it works. But I think once you get to this stage, it is all about matchups. The seeds can get thrown out the window. Here's what I'd say about when you look at a 5 in front of Michigan's name and a 1 in front of Auburn's name. If Roddy Gale Jr. plays the way that he played against Texas A&M, you could put a 1 by Michigan seed.
Right.
Yeah. Because Michigan needed a wing player to deliver. Now, I'm not expecting 4 threes and 26 points from Roddy Gale Jr., but what I think is fair to expect is how he asserted himself on that initial drive to the basket, how he went 8 of 8 from the free throw line, and that he took threes confidently. Because something that's overlooked in that game against Texas A&M, Dusty May talked about this pregame and a little bit postgame. He just has confidence that this team will find a way, and he doesn't know exactly how it's going to happen. Michigan's 3-point percentage was about what we expect this year.
Right.
They have not shot better than 40% since the Penn State game, the Trey Donaldson comeback late. Everybody else on Michigan had 2 total threes. So it just kind of ebbed and flowed to where it was Roddy's turn. Maybe it's Ruben on Friday night or Namari. Who knows what it'll be. But seeds can get thrown out. And at this stage of the game, if Michigan is playing the way that they did against Texas A&M, am I going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, they can win the national championship? Sure, they can. They're 1 of 16.
Yep. But
do I believe they can beat Auburn? Yes. Do I think they should be the underdog? Absolutely. Yes. Right. Auburn is excellent. And a team's good when their struggle, quote unquote, down the stretch was 3-3 over the last 6.
Right.
And their Ken Pom rankings have gone from all time to just they're just number 4 in the country.
Right.
That's where we are. That's how good Auburn is. That's how good they are.
Yep.
But if Michigan's playing like they did against Texas A&M, like they did against Purdue, Maryland, and really that second half against Wisconsin, first half was pretty ugly offensively. They can match up with anybody. Doesn't mean they're going to be favored, but shoot, I think the UC San Diego game is the only game they've been favored in these last 5 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And they were the popular upset pick. It's probably pretty close to 50-50 in the bracket. So those types of stories aren't impossible, but hey, remember FAU was a Lamont Butler shot away from playing for the national championship.
Right.
Once you get to this point, anything can. 2018, Loyola Chicago, they were an 11 seed. NC State last year. The matchups are there, and let's put it this way. If they beat Auburn, they can win the national championship because Auburn's one of the best teams in the country.
Yep.
Two-part question. I think about a radio play-by-play guy. I mean, right now it's got to be just the dream life. You're going to Colorado. Now you're heading to Atlanta. One, how much fun is it following this team on a run like this? And two, heading into last weekend, are you surprised that you're still working, or did you think you'd be on vacation by now?
I'll hit the second part first. Going into Indianapolis, I really believed, even with the 3-game losing streak, and maybe this is the maize and blue infiltrating here, I really believed they could beat Purdue because Purdue was like Michigan, not finishing all that well.
Right.
And then I wanted, from a win standpoint, I wanted Maryland because I was worried about the Illinois matchup. And then I said, well, hey, once you get to the championship game, anything can happen. So it felt feasible to me, right? I wasn't picking Michigan to go and win that. You lose 3 straight by 43 points. You're not thinking that they're going to go and win 3 games in 42 hours.
Right.
And I was very worried about the UC San Diego matchup. I was worried about A&M for Michigan to, kind of, I don't know what, chameleon-like fit the issues that these teams could do to Michigan, and at least they won it against A&M. I think they kind of held serve from a turnover standpoint against UC San Diego. It wasn't a good performance, but it wasn't a bad one. And when you're a 5 seed in that spot, just don't invite them. They did in the second half, but it wasn't because of turnovers, right? It was because of some failed execution offensively, and time a guy went off. To answer your first question, I mean, this is what we do it for. It's an opportunity to call these types of big moments, to cherish the memories with these young men who, Terry Mills is the best person I've ever worked with. He is so fun to call these games with. And he's always talked about this, in 1989, he didn't have anywhere close to the appreciation for what that team accomplished for him. The fact that team shocked the world, but now he does. It has grown over time.
Right.
It really has, I always think of this. I don't know if you all have seen the show Squid Games, right? Like in sports, like your season's livelihood goes into just these 50-50 situations. And you go into that arena, and I had confidence Michigan was going to get it done. But I know everybody wearing Texas A&M stuff had that same confidence. And then they lose, and the season's over. And it makes you appreciate. I think Scott Van Pelt put it perfectly. In the NCAA tournament, you're watching 40 minutes just to hope you get another 40 minutes.
Right.
And then if you stack enough of those up, you win a national championship. But it's really hard to appreciate what you get a chance to call or get a chance to watch as fans. Because we knew, I mean, this time last year, I genuinely wondered when we would be back in the NCAA tournament. Before the hire of Dusty May, I thought making the Big Ten tournament would have been a positive step forward, because if these rules were in there last year, Michigan would have been eliminated from the Big Ten tournament in February.
Right.
So when you put into that perspective, it's tough not to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the last thing on that, Jared, I think the most fun I've had about this team is that really the culture's real. I tried to talk about it a little bit last year without, I'm in a unique, I consider myself more of a liaison. I'm not a reporter. I'm a liaison. I have to, I don't get my paychecks from Michigan, but I get my paychecks from a company that gets their paychecks from Michigan.
Right.
So I have to be careful about that. But I think you could tell in my broadcasting and my podcasting, last year's culture wasn't there. There were a number of reasons for it, some fair, some not. This team in 12 months and 5 days or whatever it is, has built a culture that can last. And that doesn't mean this roster is going to look exactly the same as it will next year, because it doesn't. But I also think that means even if it's year one, Dusty May said since April, hey, we're trying to win.
Right.
And when you get to this point, expectations change. We will look at this year in 5-10 years and fully appreciate it. But every single person in that locker room, they look at this as an opportunity. And if you are in the Sweet 16, you have an opportunity to do something special, go to a Final Four and beyond. You got to take advantage of it. Expectations change, and that's because of the culture they've been able to build.
Well, we're testing you here because I'm going to throw a 2-parter at you too, Brian. One One has to do with the team, and it kind of segues into what you're talking about right there. Early on in the season, you got the new coach coming in, trying to change culture. I won't really say struggle, but they had 3 losses by 5 points early on in the season. You know, your perspective, seeing that and how they evolved to where they are now, that's one question. And the other question is really a diss towards the NCAA. We've had our issues with them, not only in football, but in basketball. Why on earth do they open up a transfer portal? You lose a guy like Pippen, you know, coaches and schools have to deal with this. And then you got coaches that are able to take other jobs while they're still in the tournament. Thoughts on both of those?
I'll start with the close games. You know, if you truly even this out, Michigan probably shouldn't have 13 wins by 4 points or less. That's really tough to do.
Yeah. It's never been done.
No, literally, yeah. It's
right.
Who can forget? What is it? 86 Bradley. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But I do think that there were some battle scars that came from those games. And, you know, I always kind of shied away. There was that storyline around late December. Oh, Michigan could be undefeated.
Right.
Michigan could have beaten Wake Forest. Michigan had a rally fall short against Arkansas, where if that game is 45 minutes, Michigan wins that game. I think the game that really emboldened this team to figure things out was Oklahoma. That game was it was one of the most shocking, like, quick losses I've ever seen. Sometimes you see like a big lead just slow, and you're trying to like grasp on to the last bar of the ladder before you fall. And this was, oh, hey, good basketball game. Worst that can happen here is we go to overtime. Oh, 4-point play, miss a shot, game over. Wait, we lost? and that was a I think it was an interesting aspect because it did turn the tide for these close games. But what I appreciated about it was that was I think one of the, as I learned Dusty May and his cadence, his processes, all of it. That was an instant. I got down to the locker room, and the most unique part of my job is to do the post game interview. After wins, it's really easy. I could say, "Hey, coach, basketball, huh? How about that?" And he could talk. In a loss, especially like that, I need to come up with some sort of question that isn't just like, "Well, that was BS, huh?"
Right.
And he, yeah, it's the only part of my job that I ever am like, yeah, I deserve a little bit of sympathy. Everything else is like, Brian, you know, people complain about travel. I'm like, I love the travel's great. This is great.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's unique, right? Like sideline reporters on TV don't interview. I always appreciate like the national championship game loser getting interviewed by, normally it's Tracy Wolfson, does a great job, because that's not very common, right? It's normally, hey, we're going to talk to Dusty May and Roddy Gale Jr. and then shuffle everybody off the floor so that we can have Wisconsin BYU.
Right.
And Dusty and the assistants, you could tell that loss pained them. But I happened to get down there before Dusty was ready to talk. Just circumstantial, got down there quick, and he took a little bit more time because, again, it slipped away very quickly. And it was a constructive conversation among the assistants and Dusty. It was a passionate one. No yelling, screaming, just being mad that they let an opportunity slip away. But how do they fix it? And I don't know what of that conversation distilled into where Michigan got here, and it's not as simple as that. But I do think, in particular, that Oklahoma game, where it can just slip away in a moment's notice, was really staggering. It was truly staggering.
Mm-hmm.
Ted, I talked so long. What was your second question?
About the NCAA transfer portal, coaches moving on.
So what I'll say about this is, I mean, look at, nothing's going to be perfect. And a lot of people, rightly so, criticize the NCAA for the South bracket. It's amazing that you can have a completely wrong seed with Michigan and it be like the fourth thing wrong with the bracket in the South. It could have been Louisville against Auburn and Lexington, the number 1 seed. That's inexcusable. North Carolina making the NCAA tournament was inexcusable.
Right.
And you know what? You know who got screwed most of all from a team standpoint? UC San Diego. They had no business having to play Michigan That team deserved better.
Right.
They were a 30-win team that didn't just win, but dominated their conference. They won 15 straight, 13 by double digits. And you face the team with the 4th most quad 1 wins in the country?
Right.
Yes. Michigan got screwed too, but UC San Diego got more screwed. So that's my preamble to the NCAA portion. Where I think the NCAA misses on this, and I think they miss a lot on some stuff. They do some things well too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to knock the NCAA.
Right.
But the NFL is king at making every portion of their calendar as relevant as it can be.
It's year round now. I mean, you care about the NFL year round now.
Think about, Matt, the schedule for college versus the NFL, right? In college, for football, you announce a game that's 10 years from now.
Right.
And in the NFL, you have a whole weekend. We have a reveal. There's conversations on television shows. Think about the NFL draft. Why is the NFL draft so popular? Because it is at a barren wasteland of football. It is late April. We are dying to talk about somebody's 3-point stance.
Right.
And we get it. If you had the transfer portal for football, for basketball, for any sport, if you had it, I don't know, maybe around when a semester ends, call it May. I know, crazy. College sports would be in the conversation. It would be fair to everybody, and it would generate interest.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are taking away the spotlight from the best 15 games you're supposed to have during a season so that you can say, oh, well, hey, look at this center from the West Coast Conference.
Right.
And hey, I'm going to look at the center from the West Coast Conference, right? I'm going to do it. But it drops away when you do it at this point, right? Major League Baseball doesn't have free agency during the World Series. They wait till a few days after. Keep the conversation going, but spread it out.
Right.
And to me, it's just such a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's
the one. Yeah. Well, the one just like that makes it. I'm definitely with you guys and Ted. We've talked about this on the podcast a number of times. We just don't understand football, even though it's kind of confusing when they open the transfer portal window during the college football playoff. You can somewhat justify it. It still doesn't make sense. Somewhat justify it because they say these are student athletes and they need to get to their new school before that winter semester begins. So that's the one where you're like, okay, if a kid is going to transfer, before the winter semester, he needs to enroll into Michigan State, wherever before the winter semester. So that's the one where I guess that makes sense. But it's still like Michigan had a couple guys transfer this year and they're like, while they're still going to play in their bowl game and all that kind of stuff. So that's the one where football, I guess you can kind of justify it, but it still doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's fair, Matt. I think where you can look at it is, hey, let's just create 2 windows, one in the winter, one in the spring, around the semester end.
Right.
And pick the one for each sport that is away from the postseason. Yeah. Because
but then the winter wouldn't be away from football. Football players would have to wait till the spring, and then spring ball is already gone.
Yeah,
right?
So for me, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
For waiting for the spring, because then they will have had a whole year, right?
Yeah.
The problem is when you open up the can that this has with revenue sharing, NIL, transfer portal, it's really hard to put it back in, and that's where I just think, the NCAA does an incredible job running March Madness. Every little detail is thought through to execute this tournament.
You can only use the NCAA cups, right?
Correct. That is kind of a pain, I will admit. That is not
no
easy.
other cups, just NCAA.
It's the only time each year that I'm nervous about, like someone jumping onto the table and then spilling water everywhere because you're like drinking coffee. You're drinking water like you're drinking coffee.
Right.
We just have this little lid on this thing. Anyways, I always look so weird. I think, but yeah. They do such a good job with some of those details. I just wish they would apply that to the way to market the sport, because now this is a business now. We can turn this into a pretty cool conversation point where we're talking college sports in the middle of May when, listen, I love baseball. I came up through baseball calling games, but May baseball doesn't do it for me. October baseball, sign me up. May baseball, I want to talk about transactions in college.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to watch the Tigers opening day and it's snowing, and you're just like, all right, this is not baseball. What are we doing right now?
Hey, in fairness, it could snow in May.
True.
We all know that.
It's true.
True. I've got one more for you, and I know the other guys probably want to jump into before we get you out of here. So we've talked about Ted. Obviously, I don't know if he told you in your guys' interaction. Ted called play-by-play for sports radio for over 30 years, and he called some of my games, called some of Jared's games, and countless other athletes in our area there in mid-Michigan. Kind of more on the local level, and luckily he's got some people that are continuing. Now that he's kind of sliding into retirement, and that's going to continue to go, and kind of along the lines, local news is kind of like drifting away. Sports radio on the smaller level for local sports, small town, is kind of starting to go away a little bit. And it's a shame. We love it. I mean, we talk about it a lot on this podcast. We love that stuff, supporting your athletes at the high school level. My question, though, is kind of your thoughts on that, because it makes me think the other day when UNC was playing Ole Miss, a bunch of my coworkers born and raised here in North Carolina, Carolina fans, Tar Heels through and through. This one guy, a little older, he went to school with Michael Jordan. He was at UNC with MJ, walking around campus with Dean Smith and Michael Jordan. He's got some pretty cool stories. But he comes into work, Tar Heels are on, and he's got his AirPods in, and he's listening to the local Tar Heels radio. And it made me appreciate that, because I remember growing up, my dad would sometimes mute the TV and turn on Frank Beckman. And he was like, I don't want to listen to Brent Musburger. I don't want to listen to whoever's. I want to listen to Frank Beckman. And I think there's still so much value in radio play-by-play, whether it's at the high school level or at the college level, even at the pro level. They still have, radio play-by-play for pro games. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Because obviously that's what you do. Do you still think that there's obviously a very big value outside of if you're in your car? Sometimes you got to turn on the radio to listen to a game. But, if you're just trying to consume a game and you want to listen to somebody like yourself who's a little more connected to Michigan basketball, not just some person who's been thrown onto a broadcast, kind of just your thoughts on like the value of traditional radio sports play-by-play.
Yeah, it's a great question. And first off, Ted, congrats on all you've accomplished. That's really cool. And, to me, that is at the core of all of this, right? Because, I think about, and listen, I will critique officials. I certainly did on a Sunday in Indianapolis recently, but, local high school sports, they have an officiating problem. They have a volunteer problem, because, these things do not make money like the NCAA tournament, but the NCAA tournament does not maximize itself without all of that and all of the passion coming from, following the sport from a young age, playing the sport at a young age. I think it was such a misfire by Major League Baseball to condense all the minor league baseball stuff, because there are now a bunch of kids who are nowhere close to any professional baseball. But it's a lot of times following the money. I know we're not going to have better ratings than CBS, right? I get that. If I have a game where I truly want to watch it, I'm going to watch or follow it, right? Digest it. I'm going to watch it on television. But I think where audio really factors in, and I'm a big podcast guy. So I'm going to add this one to the conveyor belt.
Yay.
But for me, if you are not watching or following or digesting a game with 100% attention, I'd rather listen to it on audio, have it in an AirPod while I'm working on the yard or doing stuff around the house or playing with our dogs and cats here in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? Like, to me, that has value. The other aspect is, for it is great. I mean, Ian Eagle and company are going to do Friday and Sunday. I am going to get crushed in the tail of the tape head-to-head battle of play-by-play versus play-by-play, because Ian's as good as it gets, and he's a better dude. But Ian calls the game differently than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I try to keep it as unbiased as I can from a digest. Listen, if Michigan's losing by 15, I'm not going to tell you about how great, Trey Donaldson's 1 of 5 shooting is, right? That doesn't do anybody any help. But the passion you get, the analysis you get, the talking points you get are just different.
Yep.
And for me, again, I understand when people watch a game on TV. I do it all the time. What I'm always confused by is those who are just driving along and just listening to the TV call while they're not able to watch the TV call.
Oh, right.
And that's what I hope people will give us a chance on. And I'm super thankful for this team because it does feel like this team has allowed Terry and me to have some big moments that have gotten out there. And it's not about us at all. It's about the team. But I'm thankful that these players give us a chance to get excited. And I think it's been well received by fans. And that for me, if you were asking 18-year-old Brian, who was starting to call games for the Southern Ohio Copperheads, and if you know who that is or what sport it is or where they play, then, tip of the cap to you. But when I was doing that, all I wanted to do was call games that mattered with people listening. When I was calling, collegiate summer league wooden bat baseball and minor league baseball, we were mostly online only, and I'd finish a broadcast by my sign off was just thanks so much for listening. Because genuinely, if you were listening to a 15-minute post-game show on an internet-only feed of a Burlington Royals game, and I wanted to come to your home and give you a gift basket and a hug and tell you to reach out to me anytime, because there were plenty of instances where no one was listening. So that's what makes this special. That's what makes this fun. And for me, yeah, like, if we had 1 million listeners, but no one enjoyed it, that wouldn't be as good as if we had 5 listeners, but 3 of them enjoyed it. Right. Like that's what we do this for. And it's, when you get runs like this where I have nothing at all to do with it, it's pretty special because you've really hit the lottery in that regard.
I got one last question for you. Thank you for all your time. We'll keep it quick. Looking ahead to this weekend, I mean, the possibility of getting a Michigan versus Michigan State rematch is real, and it would be awesome. We recorded, maybe it was 2 weeks ago at this point after the whole Spartan logo incident. I didn't love what Michigan did, but it seems like it really brought the team together since then. They haven't lost since. Almost like a coach who will get a technical foul on purpose to maybe try to rally his team. One, what did you think of that incident dating back 2 weeks? And do you really think it maybe brought the team together a little bit?
I don't know if that brought the team together specifically. I do think that the opportunity to compete for something else reset things. And I think they just needed to. There's the whole Jim Harbaugh saying, oh, if you just pop one olive out, then all the olives come out. I think there's a little bit of that to what the Big Ten tournament proved to be. It also, again, helped with some of the matchups and how things went and Michigan playing better. From the logo standpoint, it's always, I'm not from the state of Michigan originally. I always find in-state rivalries to be so fascinating, especially in a state that has the pro sports teams that Michigan possesses, is that you could be sitting at Chrysler Center or the Breslin Center and sit next to somebody who is one's wearing maize and blue, one's wearing green and white. And then you could have those same two, and they would be, not liking each other, wouldn't conversate, anything like that. And then you could ship those exact same 2 people to Comerica Park or Ford Field, and they would have a great conversation, and they'd be wearing the same colors and all of it. Right. There's obviously a real passion. I think it's a rivalry that has the chance to be really, really special. And it's one that I was hoping that, it was a terrible way to get to this point, but I was really hoping that the aftermath of the shooting in East Lansing and that game in Chrysler, which was a very special moment, it was 2 communities coming together. I wish it would have helped things. It didn't last very long, unfortunately. So the incident, I think there were issues on both sides. I do think that assuming that the head coach of a program who spent his last X number of years in the Southeast had the Michigan State traditions memorized. The reality is, no one goes in, if you're at this level of athletics, you're not going into a game thinking, well, hey, if we lose, we need to make sure we do this. No, we're bleeping winning that game. We don't care about that, right? The 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament, there's so much raw emotion from Mount St. Mary's head coach. Because even though no one had Mount St. Mary's over Duke in a bracket, the Mount St. Mary's team really believed they had a chance to win that game because you're competitive. You're that good. You are a collegiate athlete making the NCAA tournament. So, and the other thing I'll say too is, listen, Trey Holloman is a hell of a player. I love watching his game. If you think Trey Holloman was just politely asking Fat Brooks and LJ Kaysen to move off the logo without any sort of profanities, like I don't know what to tell you, right? He can uphold that tradition. All more power to him, all of it. I'm glad it stopped at just pushing and shoving. I liked how Dusty said, yes, we'll step back a little bit more next time, right? That's fine. What I will say about this weekend, it's going to be asked in pregame media availability on Thursday. Why? Because there were 5 questions to Danny Wolf about the potential of a Michigan-Yale game last weekend.
Right.
That was a 5-13 matchup, right? Yale's one of the best mid-major programs in the country, but if you're talking about that, then yes, this is going to be brought up. And people have asked, well, do you want it? And what I'll say is this. I'm all for it, but I'll tell you this. With Michigan going and probably being outnumbered by Auburn, because Auburn fans could have planned for this a month ago. We knew Auburn was going to be a number 1 seed a month ago, and this is close to Auburn with being in Atlanta. Michigan fans always travel well, but they're going to be outnumbered on Friday. How much? We'll see. But if the 26-minute goes up on the clock as Michigan comes out on the court and Michigan State's walking off with their season over, having lost to Ole Miss, can you imagine the jolt of energy from those wearing maize and blue seeing the green and white leave that arena?
Ooh.
Or
I'm just saying.
Or the other way. If Michigan State wins, that gives Michigan a little more juice too, right? Because it's like, we got to win, so we can go beat Michigan. I like either way, right?
Matt, this is not a player thing. I genuinely don't think the players at that point they need to focus on. I mean, Auburn. To me, I mean, Auburn's been better than Michigan State, and there have been very few teams better than Michigan State this year. Right. Michigan State, what they did, I tip my cap, right? Like, there's nothing you can say from a Michigan standpoint for this year. Yeah, we can go back to insert matchup in the past. Of course, we can all do that. We all have that, right? But I don't think it matters for the players.
Yeah.
But for the fans. I do think there would be a bigger jolt of energy if Michigan State season's ending.
Right.
While you are trying to knock off the number 1 seed in the entire tournament. If it gets to be a Sunday afternoon, which would be the 5:05 game on CBS, I promise you that if it's Michigan State, spoiler alert,
right.
that would be the atmosphere would be unlike any other. It'd be the biggest game in the history of the rivalry. But I'm just saying from the fan standpoint, if they're seeing a Hall of Fame coach head to the bench, and head to the locker room with the season over, as your team's coming out, I would I'd be pretty fascinated by how that atmosphere would feel.
There'd be a lot of see you later.
Well, for our listeners that are listening and not watching, I'm sure they're getting chills by hearing that description of what could possibly happen. Hey, Brian, we appreciate all the time you've given us. So I'm going to end it with another quick 2-parter, and then we'll let you get out of here. Number 1, the Trey Donaldson coast to coast. Did you sleep much that night at all? Because I know when I've done games that are just classic finishes, you're so juiced, it's hard to unwind. That's question 1. And the other one is for my young guy that I brought on board, Casey Smith, and for other young broadcasters, you're still young, but what would you recommend them to do? I know I checked out some of your homework for games, and my philosophy always was you can never have too much homework. You might not use half of it, but at least you got it. Those 2 questions, will end it there.
Yeah, on the Trey thing, I'm glad that happened and kept me awake because it was a pretty easy prep for Purdue, who we had played twice, and Maryland, who we had played 10 days ago. But it had been 102 days since we had seen Wisconsin, so that helped that I was jazzed up. I will say, because I was very happy with the call. Loved Terry's enthusiasm that he brought with it. I see why players can get lost in their press clippings, because I definitely read social media too many times when I should have been preparing for Wisconsin. So I do understand how guys are like, oh yeah, I how can this player be so excited about reading these stories about how awesome they are? Yeah, I did it. Like that was a mistake on my part. I paid for it with sleep that night. I remember we got back from Indy about 1 a.m. Monday, and I just crashed. And then we had, we were leaving Tuesday for Denver. For young broadcasters, the one thing that I would say that I try to be a little bit different on, you'll hear this a lot in a lot of industries. Oh, it's about who you know. And that is true to an extent. But ultimately, it is about who knows you. You always want to put forth the best effort you can. You want to work hard in your broadcasting. You want to give your best. You want to have good preparation. Those are the prerequisites, right? There is no difference, I'm guessing, between my prep and Ted, your prep. And that doesn't, and I'm not any better of a broadcaster than I was last year when no one was saying how, oh, what a great call by Brian and Terry. Well, yeah, Michigan was down by 35, right? It didn't matter. So all those are prerequisites. If you really want to climb in this industry, it's about the people who know you. And the comparison I use is, if you look at your phone, you go to the context, scroll all the way down, right? I think I have more than 1,000 numbers in my phone. How many do I really use? How many do I really call? If I can go up to a broadcaster or a decision maker in the industry, I can introduce myself, and then, hey, I know them, right? But if I then 6 months from now call them, are they going to answer? Are they going to want to talk? And that it means that is predicated on you building that relationship. You can always make introductions. And the people who don't want to talk, I disagree with those individuals, but there are people who just don't show interest, and that's okay. You're not going to bat 1,000. But those who do, if they're in a position you want to be in, or if they're a decision maker who you want them to decide on you, it is incumbent upon you to further that relationship and get to a point where they then know you. Because the people who really can help you in your life are the ones who, when they see your name pop up on the phone, they're excited about it.
Right.
And that's a difficult thing to do. So for me, it's about that. But yeah, all that stuff about preparation, about loving the job, about caring, about being on time, being willing to work, those are all prerequisites. And there are a lot more really good broadcasters than there are opportunities. There are a ton more than 16 great play-by-play broadcasters who are out there calling games on radio for basketball.
For
Just
sure.
because I'm doing it doesn't make me any better or worse than them. Just like in the same last year, I wasn't any better or worse than people who were getting to call those opportunities. So if you keep that mindset, I think it's easier to kind of compartmentalize and appreciate the good times when they come.
Well, Brian, I mean, this has been a really fun conversation. We appreciate you taking out the time. We know you got stuff to do and get ready for, a couple more Michigan wins. But before you move on, tell us, you were talking about your podcast. Tell our listeners, where to follow you, what other information you can pass on.
Yeah, the biggest project we have that's kind of on demand is Go Blue podcast. John Jansen and I do In the Trenches, which is a football-specific Michigan podcast. I handle Defend the Block, which is all things basketball, and then Conquering Heroes is produced by me, hosted by John. We talk to a different coach each and every week. Great conversation this week with Kevin Connery. Michigan men's lacrosse just knocked off the #1 team in the country. We understand that, football and basketball are the kings of Ann Arbor, but it is amazing spotlighting some of the other stories in and around Michigan athletics, because to be able to accomplish all that Michigan has in the sports that don't get as much spotlight, I think I get maybe just as much, if not more, fulfillment from doing that show than I do the other two. So definitely encourage people to check it out, Go Blue Podcast. And you can follow me on X at Brian Boesch, spelled as everyone would have totally guessed, Boesch. Yeah, my ancestors really wanted to mess with me when it came to social media branding.
Well, best of luck, and we really appreciate it again, and go blue.
Go blue. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, Brian.
Good deal.
Awesome,
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Enjoy Atlanta.
Yeah, no doubt. I hope to see you guys in San Antonio. All right.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully you're there all weekend, right?
I want to be busy. Absolutely. But no, if I can ever help down the road, please let me know. Happy to do it.
Appreciate it. We'll stay in touch. Thanks, Brian.
Right. Be well.
Take the time, man.
All right, guys. Brian, that was fantastic. I mean, he I think he's 30 years old, maybe a little older than that, but a young guy, but you can see he's got a lot of talent when it comes to broadcasting. And man, he's got to be on a high right now, broadcasting Michigan basketball heading to the Sweet 16 in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is kind of what he was alluding to, but I think it was when he was answering a question from you, Ted, talking about like preparation and, just being in the industry. Like, I think we talked about it when Corona football was making their state championship run with you, calling that run. Sometimes, because he was talking about last season with Michigan basketball when they're only an 8-win team.
Yeah,
you can be Vince Scully, you can be the best in the business, but if the team that you're assigned to isn't good, you're almost. I'm trying to say, like, you're only as good sometimes as the team that you're calling.
right.
Like if you're assigned to a team that isn't good, no one's going to listen to your broadcast, because the team stinks. But, like if you're calling Michigan basketball making a Sweet 16 run, if you're calling Corona football making a state championship run, people are going to listen. And then your energy is going to be up and you're going to be on your
100%.
game. So, yeah, I mean, it was cool to kind of hear him kind of describe it that way. But, yeah, he's got to be loving life right now.
Well, let's get into it a little bit. I mean, both Michigan and Michigan State now in the Sweet 16, as Jared mentioned, a potential matchup in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. No real surprises to me. I mean, I thought they'd both be where they're at right now. And full disclosure, I didn't want to say it in the Brian interview, but I got the Spartans going all the way.
Yeah, you've noted a few different ways how great your bracket is.
Right.
It was a little bit of a somewhat disappointing opening weekend. We had a great game with Maryland and Colorado State on Sunday. Maybe we didn't have those awesome games, but both Michigan games were very good games. So I know we both appreciated those, and especially when they win.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I did take Michigan to the Final Four on my bracket, but it was more of a heart play than me actually thinking they were going to get it done. I mean, I was ripping this team after the Michigan State incident, and all they've done since then is shove it up my mouth. I mean, they've been good. The way they've been able to play different styles. I mean, he laid it out perfectly in that Texas A&M game. I mean, maybe the best rebounding team in the entire country. Michigan out rebounded them. They're finding a way to get it done, and that's what you need to do in March. And I don't know about you guys, man. He painted the picture of a scenario where Michigan State's walking off the court losing. Of course, I'm never going to be too disappointed with a state loss, but we're so close to it, man. Just each team's got to win one more game, and we really would have the matchup of a lifetime on Sunday. So that's my dream heading into Thursday and Friday's games. Just get both these teams one more game, and let's watch that Michigan State rivalry. That'd be just awesome.
It would be crazy because, you always hear things about like it's hard to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. And, Michigan State obviously has already won 2 in a row against Michigan this season. But this is the NCAA tournament's completely different. So I'd almost throw out those previous 2 games in the regular season if that matchup did happen. But, both teams, I mean, Ole Miss for Michigan State isn't a slouch. I mean, they're a really good, solid team in the SEC and, kind of similar to Texas A&M. They play a style that I think matches up really well with Michigan State. The big thing with Texas A&M and Michigan was Michigan gave up a ton of offensive rebounds, and Texas A&M was the best offensive rebounding team in the country, and Michigan actually controlled it. I think Ole Miss and Michigan State are pretty evenly matched, and especially if Richardson and Fears and their offense kind of steps up, and Akins has been playing well. There's no reason that Michigan State shouldn't be in the Elite Eight, but kind of like Brian was saying, and we've said on the podcast before, at this time, you never know. Auburn's the overall number 1 seed for a reason, but Michigan could upset them for sure. If they go out there and they shoot well, don't turn the ball over, there's no reason they can't beat Auburn. I could also see them losing by 15, 20 points because Auburn is really good. So, it's one of those things. Same with Michigan State. I could easily see Michigan State winning or losing by 10 or 12 points. You just never know how these games are going to go. And Michigan State, it's just crazy because they were losing at halftime to New Mexico. And, people were starting to say, oh, is this another, Tom Izzo team that doesn't make it out of the first weekend or whatever? And we've, everyone knows at this point, and we've said it before, second half this year, MSU has just been really good. I don't know what Izzo was saying at halftime, but, he's got some leadership in there, and he's got some young players who, believe in themselves or whatever. So, I'm not counting Michigan State out of any game, basically, is what it comes down to. And really even Michigan right now, like you can take a shot at them for the inconsistent play and how they've played, but they win close games. I mean,
Yeah, it's a skill.
I don't know how, because sometimes watching them is just like so frustrating, but they win these close games. So Auburn's a different beast. So you can't mess around with Auburn.
You brought it up a little bit about the Spartans, and Izzo obviously does a great job making halftime adjustments. But the other thing, they're a second half team because I think they wear teams down with their depth. I
Right.
mean, they're going 10 deep, and then they're all almost very similar. They're three big guys, similar, and then their outside play. And Richardson, they won despite him having not a real good game.
No,
He didn't even score until last couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a fun squad, and you're exactly right. The depth. It's like the fact that they have a center, they're always constantly rotating those three centers, and they always have them running full speed rim running, and it just helps their fast break. So freaking much. One small thing I want to complain about and I saw this on Mike Feleni's show. This has become like the news headline, or this is just like the overall acceptance almost. I'm speaking gibberish, but he basically said something along the lines of, "I'm so sick of Michigan fans parachuting in when their team's good and paying attention. They don't care. They don't watch every game." Am I crazy? Michigan State fans have been so spoiled for their whole life. They're good every year. They're good every year under Tom Izzo. They've made the tournament, whatever it is, 25 straight years. Yeah, of course you're going to watch every game when that's the product you're putting on the floor. Who in their right mind, unless you're psychotic, is watching every game of Michigan last year on an 8-win team? When they're, like what Brian said, when they're losing games by 35 points. Am I crazy? What is this belief that Michigan fans parachute in for basketball season? We're always there when the team's worth rooting for. I don't think that's fair weather fan. I just think that's a normal fan who lives a normal life. If the team is winning 8 games, you're a lunatic for watching all those games.
Right.
What do you guys think? To me, it's the most annoying thing that's thrown out all the time. Michigan State has the best fans. I agree. They're very good fans.
Basketball.
We have pretty dang good fans too. For football, for basketball, we're seeing it right now. Believe me, we're going to be sending a lot of people to Atlanta for that Auburn game. I know that it's basically a home game for them, but Michigan's going to be represented. Right. I just think it's annoying how how we are represented as fans, as like these fair weather fans, when in reality, we're there every step of the way. If it's a good team, we have been there every step of the way this year.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're all lunatics when it comes to the Lions. We've stuck by the Lions, watch every single game, even in the 0-16, the bad years, everything. The Lions, I think Lions fans are lunatics for sure. It's paying off now, hopefully. But no, we've said it before when it comes to football season. I think every fan base has fair weather fans. Michigan State football is as fair weather as whatever he's saying about Michigan basketball fans. That's Michigan State football fans. And that's not like, I'm not taking a shot at them, but it's the same thing. When the Mel Tucker team is on an 11-win season, they're all over the place. When D'Antonio's making the college football playoff, Michigan State football fans are, at every game and they're wearing all their gear or whatever. But we know how many seasons come October or November, Michigan State football fans are checked out and it's basketball season. They're on to Tom Izzo and the basketball team. That's so right. His criticism of Michigan basketball fans is the same if it comes to Michigan State football fans or any fan base. If there's a team that's, in a terrible season, except for the Lions, you're not going to sit there and watch every single game of a dismal season.
Well, we know that's his style too, and he does not like Michigan, and it's all about his ratings and stirring up phone callers. But I've heard all that stuff before.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see though what team shows up, because I think kind of like what Brian was saying. I think we said it even after the season, after that whole Michigan State senior night logo debacle. I think Michigan just needed to get out of the regular season.
Yeah.
They needed to get done. It's a long season. I think it's just a long season. It's draining. Get to tournament play. And I saw someone, I forget who said it. I think it was Big Cat on PMT, but they were talking about Dusty May is just a great tournament coach. He can get his teams ready. He proved it at FAU. He's proven it right now with Michigan. He can get his teams ready for a matchup that you don't know who you're playing until, the night of. You can prepare for one day and then you got to go play. I think Dusty May is thriving in that situation, and he has some upperclassmen. Vlad Golden obviously has been around for 5 years. Danny Wolf's played a lot. Will Cheddar, you can say what you want about him, but he's just a solid energy junkyard dog type of dude. He's been playing for a few years, so he has a good team right now. I just wonder if the talent, if they're going to be able to match up with Auburn. And then obviously Michigan State. There's not really much else to say. I don't know if I'm picking them to make the Final Four, because I'd be if Michigan doesn't win and Michigan State has to play Auburn, I'd have the same things to say about that game too.
Right.
I wonder if Auburn will be too good for Michigan State, but that doesn't mean Michigan State couldn't beat Auburn if that's the matchup. So it's been good. The one team I didn't do a bracket, I didn't join the Fats bracket pool, but I would have picked Duke to make a run, and I'm still feeling good about my pick. I know, Ted, you're feeling good about your bracket right now. I'm feeling good about that.
Collapse in a hurry, I'll tell you that much.
Right. It could all fall apart quickly. I'm feeling good about the Duke pick. Duke right now, to me.
Yeah, they look good.
With Flag playing, he looks healthy. They're the squad to beat to me.
Just a quick comment too, back to the Big Ten and Izzo. I mean, he won the Big Ten Coach of the Year, but realistically, Dusty May, my goodness, coming off an 8-win season, bringing in the transfers, all new players. Probably, I don't even know where he finished. Did he finish second or third? Any idea?
I don't know, man. He should be National Coach of the Year. It would be funny if he doesn't win Big Ten, but I mean, from 8 wins to Sweet 16,
right?
This weekend really cemented himself in my mind. It's a big time, and the somewhat adversity near the end of the year to win the Big Ten tournament. Everybody's saying how they got screwed in seeding. They win anyway.
Right.
It's been an impressive couple weeks for him and Michigan.
Absolutely. I know we're running a little long. We had a long interview with Brian. One final thing I got on the tournament, with streaming services out there, we talked about cable TV or going to streaming, but I will tell you, it's no secret to you, I'm sure, this March Madness Live app, it's life-changing. It's amazing. We had family duties this weekend. I watched live games on my phone, man. It's free. It's free. I mean,
to me, they finally kind of cracked down on it. I thought, see, maybe it's just because I have Fubo and it's like the one streaming service that's not on March Madness Live when you go to sign into your TV provider. But to me, it's like, man, I used to just fire that app up and it'd be like it didn't update since last year, and you could just watch games without ever signing into the provider. Now I feel like they're tracking down a little bit, but you're still right. It's freaking awesome. Same with the Masters Live app, which is coming up in a couple weeks. That's another great sports watching app.
Because you have to log in through your cable provider, right? So it's free, but so like Ted, when you turned it on, did you have to log in through your cable provider?
Gosh, apparently maybe I did.
What it does is it gives you a free preview. So, and like in years past, it'll be like, oh, your free preview is going to expire. You just hit the X and like it would never expire. Right. For me, it finally expired this year, so it burned me.
I got you. I now that you mention it, maybe I did, but I just know it's on the app's on my phone. I click on it. I can watch whatever live game I want. I can watch whatever they call the thing with the live cut-ins. Fast break. It's incredible. This is my first experience with it. I love it.
There needs to be more of that. We've said it during other busy times of the year that they call the whip around shows, where you just bounce around from one game to the other. I mean, obviously the first weekend of the tournament's the best time to do that. A whip around show, just bounce around game to game to game. That's what the general basketball fan, that's the kind of thing they want to see. But do you guys think real quick before we move on from the tournament? I've seen a lot of people say, it's become a big conversation that NIL and transfer portal and stuff like that has ruined the tournament as far as Cinderella runs for mid-majors. Do you think it's one of those things that it goes in waves? Some season, all the top seeds win. Other seasons you get in NC State. Other seasons you get in FAU. Do you think it just goes in waves, or do you think we're seeing that NIL is knocking out those mid-majors because teams like Arkansas, teams like, whoever, even poach Michigan poached some, took Danny Wolf from Yale. And, do you think that's the thing, or do you think it's just, that's how it worked out this year?
Well, I'll make a quick comment. I think it has gone in waves, and I think time will tell, but I think it's leaning to, we're not going to see as many Cinderellas because of it.
Right.
Yeah, I thought in years past when it was just the transfer portal, I thought that actually helped the mid-majors, because now they have a big time advantage where I feel like most of the time they stayed together a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But think about like FAU, if 5, 6, 7 years ago, how good would that team be? They'd probably be a 1 seed in this tournament, probably 30 plus wins with Golden. I know they have a stud from Florida. They have obviously John L. Davis, Arkansas, like 3 different, basically top players on 3 different big time teams would be still together. And then Danny Wolf would be on Yale still, which was already a very good 13 seed. it's a little depressing. I think it just was an off year. We have those from time to time. Like 2023, it was awesome. So many upsets, 15 seeds winning, 14 seeds winning. This year, it just, like you said, it comes in waves, just a bit of a dud. It just wasn't a great opening round, man. There's nothing like that buzzkill. I felt it on Thursday right around 6 p.m. Like, man, wow, we waited all year for this, and we really haven't even gotten a close game yet. It really wasn't until Michigan versus UC San Diego felt like we had a big-time game that first day. So, yeah, a little bit of a bummer. You know, one small thing I want to point out that bothers me, I'm the only person this probably bothers in the world. Why did they get rid of the specialization of the courts at these regions? You don't know where the games are being. As for my dumb brain, I love seeing, it says Greensboro, North Carolina on the court.
Right.
Oh, let me do the mental math of where this game is actually being played. And you can see on the court the 4 different teams that are at that that quadrant. I hate that it's just all the same now. Now you don't know, these games might as well be played in I don't know, Taiwan. It's like you don't even know where they're being played or what's going on. It's something stupid. It really doesn't bother me that much, but in a perfect world, let's get those back on the court so that we can have those moments of realization.
I'll be looking for it now.
It is cool when you see the old school, it's still like the SD video of the old tournaments, and you see that Greensboro court because it's like purple and green, and it says Greensboro, or some of the other ones. It is kind of cool. That's what makes it fun. If your team has to go to somewhere like Raleigh or it has to go out to Denver or wherever, it is kind of cool to brand it, I guess, that way. I know you guys have probably heard it, that the wood, the courts are made in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I think all the way through the tournament, right? Like I'm pretty sure.
And the women's tournament, like some like in the UP.
Right. Real good hardwood, man. Yeah. Real pure hardwood from the UP.
Yeah. Ted, you should get on that and work your magic and trying to get whatever company that is, a sponsor or a guest, either way.
Okay.
What is it?
I could reach out. All right, let's move on here. Let's take a quick break and then let's get the prep spotlight before we get out of here. All right, guys, it is the prep spotlight presented by the Jacobs Insurance Agency. And Jared, usually you would be working at the Breslin for the girls tournament, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It lined up this year and it lined up last year, where I was on spring break last year, so I didn't work it. And then this year I had my brother's wedding. So I've missed the girls tournament now 2 years in a row. But it's still very fun, just like the men's tournament was last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rockford had missed basketball, but they lost to Belleville in Division I, 61-48. So a pretty good game, and they're young. So Belleville could be back again for a finals next season. In Division II, Tecumseh, they finished 27-1, captured its first finals championship since 1974, 54-44 win over Grand Rapids West Catholic. Ypsilanti Arbor Prep, hey, they finished the season 17-12, but they won a state championship. Their strength of schedule was obviously very strong. They were a 32-21 winner over Rochester Hills Lutheran Northwest. Angela Meganson had 11 points and 10 boards. And then Fowler, they didn't get it done on the boys' side, but they did on the girls. They won Division IV for the third time in the last 5 seasons. They downed Ewan Trout Creek out of the Upper Peninsula, 53-29. Katie Spicer, 17 points on 5 of 9 shooting. But all in all, another great weekend in the MHSAA at the Breslin Center. And, it's just great to see. And I know we talked about it last week about the private schools versus the public schools, and kind of a complete turnaround on the girls' side.
Yeah, well, and the big story was Niles Brandywine's coach.
Had
a hot 2-minute 20-second, sounding off on the private versus public schools. Wasn't the time or place for it, in my opinion.
No.
And also, you got the people I said last week, I don't know where this came from. I said Riverview Gabriel Richard was a public school. That made no sense. They're a private school. So 2 out of the 4 champions of the boys weekend were private. And he said the thing about, Arbor Prep, and it turns out that Arbor Prep is technically a public school that anybody can go to. So the fact checkers are out on this subject. It's such a hot button issue, man. I can't believe it's as big of a deal as it is, but I felt bad for the guy because, man, that's somebody who's, came up short, just barely short a couple times. But yeah, you got the fact checkers out there. It turns out they didn't lose to a public school.
Well, there's a difference between, there's all the charter schools out there, right? And those are considered public, right? Because anyone can go to a charter school as long as you can pay. But But people are like, well, a charter, that's still kind of a private school because you still have to pay to go there. So they're only going to get those people.
I agree with you. I agree with
Right.
you on that, man. 100%.
Yeah. So I don't know. MHSAA, when they see this come up, they must just
Cringe.
and like, they almost need to like release a statement. I mean, I'm not telling them what to do, but like, I don't know, like to try and bury this issue and be like, listen, there's nothing we can do, or we're looking into it or something, or hold like a town hall meeting or something and be like, if you've got solutions, bring them to the table. Let's talk it out. Otherwise, you're going to keep having 3 yahoos like us talking about it on a podcast all the time. But,
yep. I'll wrap this portion up with spring sports are underway. Track and field. Chesaning boys had 7 first-place finishes at Saginaw Valley State University. Their invite, Zach Harlan won the 60-meter and the 200-meter, and Caleb Walker won the 400 and the 60-meter. And finally, I mean, congrats to Dave St. John. Mr. Crona was the recipient of the Golden Alumni Award Saturday night. A bummer we couldn't go, but congrats to Dave. Good guy. Been there for Cavalier sports for a long, long time. So congrats to him. All right, let's wrap up the podcast. But just a couple quick things that just jumped out. We don't have to do a lot of commenting on it, but the Boston Celtics just sold for $6.1 billion. So I guess there's some money in sports, right?
It's insane.
Yeah, no arena attached to it.
No arena, and the value of these franchises is just crazy when you see how much they go up. Like, that's why it costs so much. It's a whole encompassing thing. That's why the rights to the broadcast deals are so much. That's why cable packages are going up. Like, all this stuff, it's just, it all goes together. It's insane.
I think they bought it for what, like $230 million, like 25 years ago.
Right.
And people can't believe, like, they're like, oh, it can't go up from here, right? $6 billion. It's going to keep going up.
It's going to keep going up.
Yeah, how much you think the Yankees or the Cowboys will go for when they sell?
Right.
That'd
Oh
be my
my
guess.
God! And then finally, I mean, rest in peace, George Foreman. He was a great guy in the sports entertainment world. 2-time champion in heavyweight boxing. He took a 20-year hiatus and regained the crown. I mean, that's one of the most amazing sports stories of all time.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
45-year-old George Foreman, undisputed heavyweight champion at one time, and of course made tons and tons of money selling his grill. So
what was so special about the grills, man? Why those are like very what was so awesome about them?
It's just they were kind of clever, weren't they, Matt? The way they had the grease trap at the bottom of it.
Yeah, the grease trap at the bottom, all you had to do was plug it in and it heated up like that, and you could cook anything on it: hot dogs, brats, burgers, chicken. I mean, I tweeted out, but yeah, so first of all, rest in peace to him. I mean, he was definitely a legend for a number of reasons, but that George Foreman grill, this would be another funny kind of generational thing. Clearly, Jared, you don't understand. It was a staple of every household in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I have 2 of them, an outdoor one and an indoor one.
All through outdoor and indoor, it's all throughout college, because then they came out with different sizes. They have the big one, the small one, all throughout. Every house in college or apartment, whatever, had a George Foreman grill that probably wasn't properly cleaned, caked in all the grease and everything. But all you had to do, you'd have a box of frozen burgers in your freezer. Oh, everyone's hungry, everyone's hungover, you're at a party, whatever. Slap a bunch of burgers on that George Foreman grill. 2 minutes later, they're ready and you're eating. I mean, it was amazing. And the crazy story about that is it was supposed to be Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan turned it down. I don't know if you guys ever heard that. Hulk Hogan was supposed to be the guy, and he said no to it. It became the George Foreman grill, and I'm sure Hogan looks back and says, dang, that was a bad choice.
Something about the George Foreman grill name works as well. Hulk Hogan grill, I don't know, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But George Foreman grill just sounds right.
It does. It does.
It is crazy. It is crazy to look at his video. You see the video of him fighting Ali, right? Tall, slender, fro. And then you see the video of him later, kind of a bigger dude, bald. Right. It's like, wait, this is the same guy? It doesn't seem like it, but I would not want to be punched by him.
No.
Yeah, well, I think, and I'm just going off the top of my head, but I think, wasn't it him that was fighting Joe Frazier, and it was Howard Cosell going, down goes Frazier, and he knocked him down about 3 times.
Yeah, that's when Ali was out, and Frazier was the heavyweight champ because Ali had gone to prison or whatever, had all of his issues, and they were trying to figure out a rematch with Frazier.
Yep.
And then in the movie Ali, the Will Smith movie, you see the scene where it's like, I bet it's easy to get Frazier now because Foreman just beat him. So it's crazy.
Yeah. All right, fellas, another good podcast here. I want to thank the good folks at Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center for mobility and pain relief. Make sure you contact them how to get 20% off flexibility packages and follow them on Facebook for more details. I also want to thank our other partners, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, Shiawassee County Fair, and ALS of Michigan. Again, special thanks to Brian Boesch, the Michigan radio play-by-play guy in basketball. Hopefully he can get a couple more wins for us this coming weekend. And as we always say, peace and love, everybody. Be kind. Good luck with your brackets.